Hi, and welcome to the One True Church. I'm Hugh Whitmore. Today's presentation is entitled Christians, Muslims, Jews, and Why Salvation Has Not Yet Come. Right now within Christianity, by our faith and our obedience, we've worked our way deep into the end times process, but salvation has still not yet come. This is because a couple of barriers are keeping believers from fully glorifying God. The first barrier is that Christians think that salvation primarily means their individual trip to heaven, which is incorrect. Salvation is something that happens to God first, which is the return of his eternal kingdom, which Satan stole in Genesis 2:4 through 3:24. Salvation will be fulfilled when we assist God by his rules with the return of his kingdom, and then he will accept those of us who are devout and dedicated to join him in the renewed spiritual kingdom for eternity. This misunderstanding keeps believers focused only on what they want from God rather than focusing on the urgency of glorifying God. The second barrier is that the Catholic and Protestant churches teach a false version of salvation. They say the teachings of Paul are part of salvation and thereby are necessary for salvation, which is false and blasphemous because Paul created a separate religion that is contradictory to the teachings of Jesus. The only way to the Father is through the teachings he sent with his Son. And those teachings include the Ten Commandments. These rules are very strict and difficult to follow in this sinful world, but they represent the only method of glorifying God, so they are the only path to salvation. Jesus said in John 14:6, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. This means through Jesus, by the Father's rules, and not by anything Paul said. The strict nature of these rules and the urgency of fulfilling salvation before Satan destroys our ability to do so is why Jesus said very strict things to keep believers on the path to fulfilling salvation. Things like separating from the world or even your family if these distractions keep you from obedience to God. Paul's false teachings make believers think God offers salvation for no effort, when in reality, earning salvation is time-consuming, isolating, and often lonely to properly serve God. You must enter the world to work and fulfill your physical needs, but otherwise you have to separate yourself from the world as much as you can to properly dedicate your spirit to the Father's kingdom. Turning from Paul and joyfully returning to Jesus is a step in the right direction, but for further motivation, consider what the two other main monotheistic faiths are doing. There's a Jewish synagogue near my home, and on Saturdays I see families observing the Sabbath by giving up their modern comforts, one of which is to walk to Shabbat while wearing their worship clothes. These religious people are a group far more dedicated than most Christians. Think about Islam. Every Muslim I've ever met expresses their faith by praying 5 times a day, observing the Muslim holy days, fasting, and abstaining from alcohol. These religious people, as a group, are far more dedicated than Christians in general. Their dedication requires us to increase our worship because Islam and Judaism do not serve God through the teachings of his Son. So by their efforts, they're creating power for Satan, which keeps Jesus from returning and makes our job more difficult. So please consider increasing the time you spend on your worship of the Father. My commitment is to fast and pray each Sabbath for 1 hour by reading the book of Revelation aloud to the Father. See what additional effort you can add to your religious commitment now. Stay true to your faith and keep your separation from society. Accept that salvation is only offered by the God of the Bible through his Son, and that God and Jesus both require a lot of effort to assist them in fulfilling salvation. Salvation and the return of the kingdom are well within reach in this age of connection and knowledge. So seek out others who share your faith. Read the Gospels and reflect on the teachings of the Son of God. Be strong in your faith. Whatever you're doing to worship God, add to it. Pray or fast and pray if you are healthy enough to fast. Pray to glorify God and not for the things you want. Be temperate in your behavior. Separate yourself from this corrupt world as much as you can. This task of bringing back Jesus will only be accomplished by the most devout believers that Jesus refers to as his elect. If we turn ourselves in these ways to the task of salvation, soon God will send Jesus back for us with the angels, and we will then go to live in eternity in the renewed kingdom.